Cool. Hi everyone. Welcome to the, I'm going to shut the door actually. Welcome to the Honoring Week 2. Hope everybody's doing great. So let's get started. I'm going to chant us in. If you know it, sing it. You'll get to know it eventually. If you don't, also no harm, no foul. This week we are talking about Sankalpa. So to backtrack, because all of the themes are intended to build on one another, we talked about tapas last week, right, as the overarching theme of the month. And tapas is the niyama that's related to the equity and the work, the devotional work that we put into our transformation. And ultimately our goal to get to Kriya Yoga, which is action without friction. So the question that came up last week was, how do I tapas? Super normal, right? Like, what do I do? What does tapas look like? What pieces do I tapas? How do I know what to tapas and what to keep? Or do I just tapas all the things? And we sort of answered that in the context of tapas, but now we're looking at things like Sankalpa, which will sort of clarify what we tapas. So Sankalpa comes from the root san, which is taking a vow, and kalpa, which is a heartfelt intention. So the goal of a sankalpa is like the song of your heart. Like, what is the intention of your heart that is the deep thing that will guide the work that you do? So we do a lot of goal setting here, which is amazing and great, but it's almost more expansive than specifically a goal. So, right, you can set goals, and the point of goals is to give yourself like a lightning rod, a place to go, a lighthouse at the end of your journey. And what a sankalpa is it's kind of like darshana, which we talked about last month, which is the view orientation we have. But a sankalpa is the conscious intention that you set. So the view orientation is coming from outside of you, it's coming from your teacher, it's coming from the text, it's coming from your own refinement as well. But the Sankalpa is cultivated by you taking a deep look at who do you want to be in the context of this world, and how does that being recognize its own divinity and set a goal towards that. So a lot of our goals are about setting things that are looking towards, I want to run a marathon, or I want to master handstand presses, and all that's great. That can even be like sort of supplementary to your sankalpa, right? I think recognizing I think you have to set mini goals in order to develop a spiritual practice. So like a mini goal within this context would be like, I'm gonna meditate every day, or I'm gonna act with non-violence, ahimsa. But the Sankalpa is saying, I know that I am part of the fabric of this universe, and I am inherently divine. How can I set an intention for the way I'm going to walk through this world that recognizes that and is of service? So it's very broad, right? And I think for that reason, they're actually kind of hard. Like we say every time, like if you come to one of my classes, I'll always say, like, especially in vinyasa, now it's time to set your sankalpa, your intention. And I think the languaging of it's an intention gets used a lot, and I think that's great. But it isn't just an intention of the moment. It's like, what is the tagline of your life in a deep way that recognizes you're part of divinity? It's like a big ask. So what does that even bring up for people, right? A lot of the time, like, I don't even know what would my intention be, right? Like, I don't know what this looks like. And a lot of the practices that you can do around sankalpa setting, it takes time, right? Like, it can take months or years to consider what your sankalpa is. It's also one of those things like view orientation where the job is to refine it, maybe not change it, but get clear about it, much like how a lot of goals work anyway too. But you have to sit with yourself, be very aware, sit with svadhyaya, right, which is the second part of Kriya Yoga, and say, what are the pieces that I need to develop that I am my most divine, that I am most aware of my own consciousness and potential? And then you have to like use it, right? you have to set it, you have to like write it down. And for some people it could look like a mantra, it could look like a phrase, it could even be a single word, right? There are some mantras that are so short, like neti neti, which is like not this, not this. That alone could be an intention, which is anything that is not divinity itself is not part of my practice, right? That's powerful, right? The idea of saying no. So how do we do that? Well, we're gonna do the initial practice. Not that everybody has to set a sankalpa today, like no pressure. I just told you how hard it was, and then I'm gonna make you do it. But we will do the initial practice of how to look at what a sankalpa might feel like. It's a very short little meditation, so we'll do that. But are there any initial questions about sankalpa as an idea, as a construct?
Can you contrast that with dharma?
Yeah, oh, that's such a good question. Yes, so dharma is the path you are intended to walk. So you, in the cosmic game, the cosmic lila, the divine play on the stage, we've had a bunch of like play metaphors today, so let's just keep it going, right? So lila is this idea that everything we do is a drama being acted out on the earthly stage. You are given a role in that context. But you, as the artist of your life, can craft what that role actually expresses, right? So your dharma is your role. That is the divine job you're given. And your sankalpa is how am I going to add my own expression within that and recognize that my job is to make this play good, right? So, and also dial it back. Everything overlaps, right? There's like 15 messages within each word in Sanskrit. So I'm creating very clear boundaries, and I would argue that like some of the overlays of sankalpa and dharma could be, well, maybe your sankalpa really is an expression of your dharma and vice versa, of course. So, when I'm making clear boundaries for the point of illumination, but you're given this thing that you should do, these divine gifts, these skills, the things that are being seen in you by the divine or spirit or the nature of where you're born and existing, right? Like we can take it down to any like non-physical, like spiritual level also. But your sankalpa is how you say, I am this human in this human experience. I am going to own this piece of the play, and I am going to pour my heart into it, and I am going to make this play the best play ever, right? With lots of lessons and jokes and fun on the way, right? That's also, and some sheer disasters, but also that's the goal. So you should live both your sankalpa and your dharma. There's a little more agency probably in sankalpa versus dharma, but both are the recognition of you have a divine role to play, that you are unique and special, and you are here in this time for a reason, and you are seen as part of the universal consciousness of Shiva and Shakti and its interplay. So they're the same, they're also different. It's also another way to access your place in the divine. Because I think this is now like me veering off of like actual textual references. This is my own hot take, but I think the Vedic traditions and all of their offshoot lineages are trying to give you as many ways to get to the truth of your own nature as it takes you. So if Dharma resonates with you because that feels more structured, which I think is often common, then go with that. If Sankalpa is like, I'm going to create an intention and I'm going to live that intention and that is my brand now and this is who I am, and that empowers you and sees you as a child of the divine, then that's the goal. Like, I don't think it has to be either or both. I think it can just be all of it too. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, yes.
I think the way that you saying that, and that was such a good question, that it's been kind of coming forward for me is that, you know, a goal is I will read 10 books by X date. Your dharma is the constructs of which you have to operate within, which is you only know science fiction and romance novels. Like, that's just what the universe has handed you. You don't get to have fiction. These are your own thing. Enjoy this. And then the Sankalpa is I am a reader.
Yes.
So it's not like the acquisition of how many books you're going to read or even the titles you're going to read, but just the statement and the initiation point of I am a reader as you move towards that goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's how I've been thinking about it, is like,
yes.
you don't just want to read 10 books, right? Like, what you really want to be is a reader. And so the goal is just like it's the metrics in which you want to hit, but the Sankalpa is the state of being in which you manifest to get to that goal and then even to go beyond it.
Yes, and there's an element of I am a reader because I want to tell stories, right? Like, there's the extension also within Sankalpa of I'm going to read, I am a reader because I'm also going to be part of this, like, cosmic existence. Like, Sankalpa is asking us to also see our place and, like, what can we offer when our Sankalpa is fulfilled. Like all things, I wanted to get the questions out of are there other questions on Sankalpa before I go into the dark side of Sankalpa.
Oh, the dark side.
Oh!
Take us to the dark side,
yes! Okay, so, this isn't that dramatic. I mean, it's kind of dramatic. Life view orientation, which is always kind of the way I've approached, like, Sankalpa creation, because that's kind of the lineage I'm trying to study in. But you can have a false Sankalpa, if that makes sense, right? Just like you could, everything's in balance, there's yin and yang, there's Shiva Shakti, it's all, blah, blah, but it's all the same thing. You can have a Sankalpa that is not truly of service to you. And I think this is where, like, some of the ideas of goal setting as actions to take versus, like, Sankalpa creation get messy, right? So if your Sankalpa is reinforcing the idea that you are small, or you are less than, or you are not actually part of divinity, then your Sankalpa has the wrong view. And that can be dangerous. Like, Swami Shivananda talks about, like, you must tear away all previous false Sankalpas. Like, he's almost likening them to samskaras, that they're, like, things that could ruin your life. I mean, I don't think it's like she's a life ruiner. I don't think it's a life ruiner Regina George situation. Like, I don't think it's that dramatic, right? But I do think that the reason Sankalpa crafting and undertaking should be taken so seriously is because that is your lamppost, right? Like, that's where you're going. That's your map. And it also has to be big enough to recognize that you could grow into it too. Right? Like, and goals are kind of meant to be grown into, but they're also meant to be structured. A Sankalpa might be a stretch for you. Like, the Sankalpa I've worked with for a long time is like, I am enough, or like, I am whole, right? Those are big ideas that every day are not going to feel great sometimes, or feel patently false. I don't know if anybody else is in Mercury retrograde / eclipse feelings, but I spent Friday night 2 hours bawling about nothing. I was literally like, why are you crying? My cat's just like, girl. And then I went back to watching some weird science fiction TV show. So, like, the point stands is, like, some days it's really impossible to feel enough or whole, but that your Sankalpa is asking you to stretch and grow. And recognize that, like, your enoughness and your wholeness in, like, my specific case, like, right, because I don't want to, like, pull on anybody else's Sankalpas, but, like, how are those serving the greater good? Well, the universe benefits if I'm enough and whole, right? Because I can model that for others, or I'm a recognition if we go really deep into the philosophy of, like, my wholeness is a reflection of the wholeness of all of creation, right? I am a microcosm of the cosmos. So, when crafting your Sankalpa, your intention, even just in the scope of a yoga class, why are you doing the thing that you're doing, right? If the Sankalpa is, I want to tone up for Beachbody season, that's not an intention. I mean, it might be an intention, it's not a Sankalpa. It could be a goal, it's not a Sankalpa. So, I literally use the term Sankalpa in almost every alignment flow or vinyasa class. I don't think it fits as easily in restorative and yin because we're already trying to like shut the brain down. But that word is used intentionally. And it's to like, how are we going to dedicate these practices? How are we going to dedicate our effort of tapas and svadhyaya and ishvara pranidhan and say, okay, this is my offering. And also my prayer in a lot of ways.
I think too, it's every thought has a karmic ripple.
Yes.
So if you're not structuring your Sankalpa clearly, no matter what you think, no matter how you construct it, it's going to have a ripple.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, every thought that we have has some minor or great ripple, and then you could argue the butterfly effect. But that, you know, the tradition of setting a Sankalpa is taken very seriously because every thought we have creates karma. And
Yes.
so if we're going to be setting something as serious as much of a vow as Sankalpa is, it needs to be taken with reverence because it can have many ripples.
And yes, and the idea that it's a vow is so deeply important. It's a vow. Like, it's not just like a pinky swear. It's a vow. It's between you and... I mean, I also take pinky swears very seriously. Like, I feel like that might be my most sacred agreements in the world. The goddess of my pinky swear. So, yeah, I mean, you know, a fake, fingers crossed, I guess, promise is the right one. But it's that sacred. But that's also not to, like, over-dramatize it either. Like, nobody's going to die if your Sankalpa shifts. Or, like, it has to be refined. Or, like, maybe you had a Sankalpa and then you learned and grew and then reset the Sankalpa. All of that's valid. Like, you're a human having a human experience. But what do you want to craft? And what do you want to say as you're in, like, the fire, the tapas of creating kriya, of frictionless action? What will make you more frictionless? What will reduce samskaras versus create them? I think that's what Shivananda was saying, right? Like, he's like, there's always got to be a couple swamis. They're like, I mean, this is what swamis do. They're like, don't do this, but also none of it matters. So, like this is very common in all of this literature. So, like, you know, sometimes, too, the practice of just recognizing what your Sankalpas have been, and then maybe looking and saying, hey, were these super great Sankalpas? I don't know. That can be so helpful, right? Like, what are the things I'm saying to myself when I set intentions? I used to dedicate my practice for years to boys that didn't matter. Was that a super healthy Sankalpa? Probably not, right? Like, or like, I mean, even to some extent, like, I think a lot of times in yoga, like, who do you want to dedicate your practice to? And if we're doing it just like, well, I fought with this person and they're on my mind, so I'm going to dedicate my practice to them. Like, with that kind of energy, that's not a Sankalpa, right? That's perpetuating friction. So, I'm trying to think, like, did I really dedicate my practice that long? Maybe not that long, but still, some time. I think we've all had moments where we're like, I just kind of fight with my parents. I'm going to dedicate my practice to them and tapas it out. Like, that's a really common phenomenon. That's not a Sankalpa. It's not a Sankalpa. It could be when you get to less friction, right? But, so, one, before we kind of dig into the, like, meditation practice, choose your Sankalpa wisely. It can be a weapon or a boon, or sometimes both, right? Right? And know that they can change. And know that, like, Sankalpas shift all the time. Yes! Another joiner! Hi, come on through. We're talking Sankalpas. Welcome.
Oh, my favorite topic.
We're getting ready to do a meditation practice to set them, so you came in a perfect time. Any other questions about Sankalpas? Thoughts, wishes, hopes, dreams about Sankalpas? Sankalpas about Sankalpas. My Sankalpas have Sankalpas. Probably. That's like...
Let's that's lasagna right there.
It's also like, here's the thing too, none of our intentions are happening in a vacuum. We all think they are and we all wish they were. But if you're in a room, even just practicing yoga, and even if it's a room full of strangers that have never been to your studio before, the energy is present and your sankalpas are there. So is your sankalpa of service to you, Cosmos? Or not? So we're gonna take about 5 minutes and just come to a comfortable seat. And this is a practice that you can do if you enjoy it, or even if you hate it, you can definitely do it. And then to just become embodied and become aware of like what maybe your sankalpa might be. This isn't a fix-all. Maybe you'll get a divine, I hope somebody gets like a whole like divine Kriya meltdown. That'd be amazing. Great to come at it. But the point is, this is something you could do daily along with your existing practice or seated practice to figure out. If Sankalpa hasn't been a real thing for you and the intention setting in this way hasn't manifested for you, it can be added in this way. So find a comfortable seat. So comfortable yogic seat, for those unfamiliar, sit bones rooted, knees should be below hips ideally, and your spine should be long and tall with slight anterior tilt of the pelvis. So the tailbone's angling back, ever so slightly in a back bend as you lift the chest tall, and the spine should be centered over the pelvis. Once this is engaged, you should feel less of the work of maintaining a comfortable seat. You're almost like floating in space. That's the feeling you want to have in your body. And you can just let your hands gently rest on the knees or thighs. There's no need, there is an entire Sankalpa mudra, which you can always do if you really wanted to do that in this practice. It's available to you, but you can really keep it super simple. So just let your hands rest and come to your breath. I'm a big proponent of the breath practice moving up and down the spine. So just to center, we're gonna start with this practice, and then we'll move into the Sankalpa setting. So inhale deeply and imagine the breath is coming into the root of your spine. And as you exhale, watch the breath travel to the center of your chest into your heart. Inhale into the center of your heart. And exhale to the third eye center. Inhale into your third eye center. And exhale out the crown of your head. Inhale into the base of your spine. Exhale into your heart. Inhale into your heart. Exhale to your third eye center. Inhale into the third eye center. And exhale out the top of your head. Keep going for at least 5 more breaths. Try to make the breath as long as possible and as even as possible. As you start to release the breath practice, just come to an even round of breath. Bring your awareness to the center of your chest. And watch your chest rise and fall with the breath. And begin to ask yourself, what is my purpose here? What are the things that I hold dear? What are the beliefs I have? And if I were to take my place in this divine play consciously, what would I need to grow in order to do that? Each time an answer arises in your mind, notice the sensations in your belly and in your chest. If you notice that the sensations in the belly or chest are tight, start to unpack the thing that came up. Is it true? Does it recognize your inherent divinity? Is it a goal that's of service to you? If the answer is yes, keep looking at it and breathing into it. If the answer is no, let it go and wait for something else to arise. If nothing comes up, breathe. What will it take for this version of yourself to expand, to grow, to be consciously awake as a child of the divine? If you found something that resonates, breathe that into the pattern of your meditation. If you haven't found something that resonates, that's okay. Keep breathing and keep exploring. So hold that intention if you found it as if it were your Sankalpa. How does that feel? Is there any tension in the belly or chest or shoulders? Does it feel universally true? Does your heart open? Do you feel connected? Explore what would happen if you held that as your guiding light. There's no rush. There's no wrong answer. Slowly start to bring your awareness back to the space, taking all the time you need, noting anything that's of value that you want to further explore. Just make a note. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, make gentle seating posture. How did it go? Interesting. So we'll give you space to share as soon as I say a couple things that might dictate the sharing. Safe space creation for sharing. If nothing came up, great. If everything came up, also great, right? So it doesn't matter. What matters, as always, is the practice and the refinement. So if you got anything and you're like, this could be further explored, take the time to explore it. If the universe came down and was like, then, sit with that and explore it. The thing that I think is very important about any work like this is time to process. So if you need to refine it, or it didn't feel real, or you had a bunch of other stuff coming up, super valid. Give yourself time. So that being said, does anybody want to share their experience or thoughts or what happened or have questions? You don't have to share. You don't have to share. Like, it's not required, but you can if you wanted to process. Yeah. I love that you're always just like, yes.
I do.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Well, I didn't want it to end.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was like, do we have to open our eyes?
You really did not want
I
to.
was
This is
like,
great.
no, I didn't. I was ready. I was still there. I loved the questions that you were asking, and I felt like I wanted to just focus on almost like you being a guide and not even necessarily like what you were saying. And then I kind of got lost in what you were saying in like a very like good way. I'm not good at that.
Yeah, it just is.
And then just what you had initially said, like your purpose. And I was just like, yeah, that's something to really marinate on. And so then I started to just think about words. And I came up with some that I just noticed like how my body felt when I said those words. And yeah, that was great.
I love that. A word, super valid. And the body knows. Like, this is no less sacred than this or whatever we want to define. So if, now there's some element too I will offer, like when I've done this practice, there's a little bit of fear sometimes. So we talked about fear versus the fire of tapas last week. So this right, well, they both sit in your core center, right? So like you can, fear in the belly this is where my fear always lives. Like, my stomach hurts if I'm afraid. So like, if there's a little bit of nuance there. So especially if you had a physical sense, that's why I kept asking questions about the chest and belly.
Yeah, I thought that was really helpful, because then it helped me distinguish what type of feeling was associated, or like how to maybe interpret a little bit the sensation. And I felt whenever there was something that landed in my heart, my chest just like lifted, and that just made me feel alive.
So give yourself permission to feel your Sankalpa in a very embodied way. That's step one, right? We talked about also like the movement from gross to subtle. That's always the goal. So give your body permission. Like, we want to live in the, I guess me, I should say, definitely me, wants to live in this like intellectual, spirit-centered way, and that's beautiful. But sometimes the body just knows too. So like, yeah, like what was a feeling? Was it tapas or was it, a little nervous? I think also, like a goal, I think your that intention, that Sankalpa should feel a little, I don't know, I don't want to say scary, I think that's the wrong energy, but like a little unsettling. Still connected, a little out, like a little nerve-wracking. Like, in a, like
enticing,
yeah,
but you're like,
yeah, like this is amazing, but also, ooh, like that's the energy you want, so. Thank you, Sharon.
I'd have to agree with like the bodily sensations. Like, I didn't even realize like what was what I was feeling there until you mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, that is a little unsettling. But it doesn't mean like it's a no necessarily, just like once the awareness was there that I was like, I was feeling that, just like more to think about. Where is that feeling coming from?
Yes.
I had two very clear words, which were trust and
Ooh.
love. And I have like a Sankalpa, like a life Sankalpa, which is heal the wounds, spread the light. And my constant obstacle on that, in that, is allowing myself to be loved. And the reason I don't allow myself to be loved is I have trust issues.
Yeah.
With just about everyone, mainly,
Sure.
you know, the people closest to me. So it was very clear. It was just trust and love, those two words. So it was beautiful. I didn't want to leave either. I was like, oh, let's stay in there.
Let's just snuggle
I
in.
don't hear you.
Let's just get. Well, here's the beauty of practice. You can always go back anytime. Here's the super fun part about practice. We go there all the time. So, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm also serious. Like, if this is something that resonates with you, this idea of setting a Sankalpa, revisit this. We only did 5 minutes. You could do 20. You could do as long as you want. If this is of importance, I think a seated practice of this sort, very specific, right? It's a very specific seated practice, will help you refine, or at least have the dialogue with the self. So my offering would be to like keep trusting and loving with the breath. Yeah, literally sit with them, which is like the answer to all yogic questions, really. Like, what should I do? Well, you should sit with that, literally. Any other questions about the practice of Sankalpa? We're going to chant it out. It's going to be quick. I ran over last time, so I'm going to try to honor the time. So if you'd like to refresh your sitting posture, make any moves. So we're singing this month to Vishnu, and the chant is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And so this is a chant to Vishnu as the sustainer, which is definitely required for tapas and sitting with ourselves. He is the ultimate sit with it dude. And in this form, we're honoring Vishnu, the sustainer, the one who holds us all together in between creation and destruction, as the supreme. So sustain, my pretty, sustain. So, ooh, she touching notes. So the way this works, wake up. The way this works is I will chant the first line. You can join me on the second. You can sing the whole time. That's not like formal Kirtan style, but I don't care. I just want you to sing. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. close class today the way I always close class. And it's to ask you to think of one thing today you're grateful for. It can be big or small, serious or silly, it doesn't matter, as long as you are soul level grateful for it. And when you know what that thing is, bring your hands together in Anjali Mudra over your heart and hold that thing and your gratitude and love for it in between your palms. I am so grateful for the practice of yoga, and I am so grateful for all of you, live and virtual, for sharing with me today. Namaste in its simplest form means the light within me sees and humbly bows to the light within.